I've always thought of my wife Linda as my rock, someone I could always rely on. So it was a real blow when she made a big mistake and faced the fallout. Tonight I was hoping for some good news at work, but I had my doubts. It was the first time in years that I put on my sharp, dark blue tuxedo, feeling completely out of my element. Instead of lounging in my favorite chair with a drink, I found myself at a glitzy event in our small town, a fundraiser filled with colleagues and local bigwigs. I had asked Linda to dress up, and boy did she ever, maybe a bit too much. At 35, she was stunning, turning heads in a revealing red dress as she descended the stairs. She was gorgeous, and everyone knew it, but she was mine, and I made sure to show it. While I'd rather have been at home, Linda seemed perfectly at ease mingling with the town's elite. She had a knack for drawing people in effortlessly. When I came back from the bar, I saw her deep in conversation with Congressman Mark Reynolds, a smooth talker with the charisma of a movie star. His presence seemed to mesmerize her, leaving me feeling like an outsider. Seeing that they were ignoring me, I stepped in politely, reminding the congressman of my seat. He kept chatting with my delighted wife, so I intervened more forcefully, placing drinks between them until he got the hint. When he finally acknowledged me, he said he'd go find his seat, dismissing me with a wave. Furious, I returned to my spot, calling him an idiot under my breath. Linda defended him, saying I was rude to a congressman. I reminded her of our boundaries, but she just rolled her eyes, a gesture that always annoyed me. Not wanting to make a scene, I let it go. Dinner ended and the band started up again. I asked Linda to dance, but she refused, leaving me feeling rejected. While I made small talk with others, I kept an eye on the congressman, who eventually slipped out to the veranda. Worried, I found him there with his arm around my wife, deep in conversation. I tried to step in, but someone stopped me, warning me not to mess with the congressman. "That's my wife he's touching," I growled as I was pushed back into the ballroom. Demanding that he get away from her, I threatened to make a scene. He cursed quietly and turned back to the congressman. Moments later, Linda returned, looking flustered and claiming she didn't realize how it looked. I grabbed her hand and led her out of there. The drive home was silent, but I knew the storm was coming. When we got home, she let loose, accusing me of embarrassing her. I told her I was just trying to protect our relationship. "You're being possessive and over the top. You acted like a jealous teenager," she snapped, her face flushed. She fell silent after that, conceding my point. Our tension made dinner with the kids awkward. A few days later, she said we needed to talk. Never a good sign. It ended badly. She told me she was going to another fundraiser with the congressman, insisting it wasn't a date. I objected, saying it was inappropriate. She denied any wrongdoing, claiming she was innocent. I challenged her on what she considered a date, pointing out the double standard with her friend Sarah. Her reaction told me I hit a nerve. "It's totally different, and you know it," she argued, saying a date with a congressman wasn't the same as a regular date. "Linda, you can't go out with another man. We're married, remember?" I reminded her, trying to get through to her. "You don't own me, Bill, even though we're married," she shot back. "I can make my own decisions. I'm not saying you're my property, but you're the mother of our kids. I don't want our family to fall apart," I pleaded, hoping she'd understand. "You're being ridiculous," she dismissed, refusing to see the gravity of the situation. I was stunned when Linda showed up in a dazzling white gown for her non-date. Our kids were in awe, asking why she was so dressed up. She struggled to explain, but I stepped in, bluntly telling them the truth. When the doorbell rang, I confronted her, giving her a choice, him or us. She opened the door to a security guard with a black limo waiting outside. "Behave for Daddy while I'm gone," she said before leaving. I stood there stunned, then focused on the kids who needed me. Drinking my troubles away wasn't an option. I arranged some FaceTime calls, one with my parents, one with hers. The kids loved chatting with their grandparents. Starting with Linda's parents, I knew her recent actions would shock them. We laughed until they noticed her absence. "Where's Linda, Bill? You haven't hidden her, have you?" my mother-in-law joked. I explained softly that Linda was on a date with Congressman Mark Reynolds and would be back the next day. Shocked, my in-laws couldn't believe I let her go. I tried to reason with her, stressing the importance of family, but she seemed convinced it was okay. The kids took over the conversation, which was a relief. My mother-in-law advised patience and communication. Later, I called my parents, who were less sympathetic. My mom suggested getting a lawyer. After the calls, I ordered pizza, watched a Disney movie with the kids, and had trouble sleeping, distracted by ESPN. In the morning, I made pancakes and bacon, assuring the kids their mom would be back soon, though I wasn't sure. There was no rush to come home after spending the night with another man. The black limo pulled into our driveway around 1 p.m., catching the attention of the kids and neighbors. Normally, they'd run to greet their mom, but this time they stayed put, disappointed by her appearance. She was still in the same dress from the night before, now wrinkled and worn. I sat in the living room as she walked in, showing no enthusiasm to see her. "Hey," she greeted, acknowledging our night apart. "Looks like you and the kids managed just fine without me." I shot back sharply, and Linda stormed upstairs asking for a shower and some rest. I raised my hands in mock surrender, accepting that our marriage was falling apart. My priority shifted to ensuring stability for our kids, determined not to become just a weekend father. The big question was whether I could stick around until the kids graduated high school. When Linda finally came downstairs at 7 p.m., I had already finished making dinner. I mentioned the leftovers in the fridge, receiving a faint smile. The kids sensed the tension and kept their distance. Alone, Linda accused me of turning them against her. I denied it, pointing out the impact of her actions on them and our neighbors. "I didn't destroy our family," she insisted, trying to shift the blame onto me. "If you can get over your ego, we can heal and stay together. But if you keep being petty and spiteful, we'll have to go our separate ways, and you'll be Mr. Part-Time Dad," she warned, catching me off guard. I had expected remorse, not defiance and anger. "It's the middle of the day, for crying out loud," I retorted. "You couldn't get enough last night? Needed a midday fling?" She paused, avoiding my gaze. "We can get past this and return to normal. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry, but I needed this for myself, and I don't regret it," she said without a hint of remorse. "That's a pathetic apology if that's what it is," I remarked. "You're only sorry for hurting me, not for what you did." "It was incredible for you," she said defensively. "Your actions shattered our vows and our family," I replied, recalling her shock when I found her in the guest bedroom. "We can't move forward unless you make an effort," she pleaded. "No, it's too late now," I clarified, locking her out of the room. That night I slept soundly, worn out from 2 days of tension. The next morning I kept our Sunday brunch tradition, making Belgian waffles. "Mom looks exhausted, like she hasn't slept," Ellie observed as we sat down to eat. "Maybe you should go out more on Friday nights," I suggested. Linda burst into tears and fled to the bedroom, leaving the kids bewildered. "Did I say something wrong?" Ellie asked innocently. "No, sweetheart. Mommy probably just missed the waffles," I reassured softly. Later, as I relaxed in my recliner watching the Cubs game, the bedroom door slammed open, and a frantic Linda stormed in, ranting incoherently. "Calm down, honey. I can't understand you with all the drooling and spitting," I remarked. She sobbed, accusing me of making her seem promiscuous to her parents. "What's a Kardashian, Mommy?" Elise asked, joining the scene. I exchanged a glance with Linda, who composed herself and sent the kids to their rooms before confronting me. "Explain," she demanded as soon as the kids were out of earshot. "I didn't hide anything from your parents since you were just following a congressman to a fundraiser," I explained. "If they agree with me, it's not my fault. And by the way, my mom had a similar reaction, so be careful next time she's around." "No, it's not like that," she began, then stopped abruptly. "An incredible experience," I interjected. "If looks could kill, I'd be a stain on the chair, but it didn't bother me much. I gestured for her to move so I could see the TV before she hurried out of the room. For the next 2 weeks, I slept in the guest room. When the kids noticed, I told them that I had a cold and didn't want their mother to catch it. I assumed Eliza had figured out my lie, but she wisely kept it to herself. It was remarkable how a 7-year-old could show such intelligence. One night, an hour after Linda had gone upstairs, I returned to our bed and quietly climbed in next to her. When the alarm went off the next morning, she snuggled up to me. "It feels nice," she muttered. "It's time to come to your senses," she said, trying to touch me. I stopped her by placing my hand on her forearm and drawing her hand away. I adjusted our position so that we were facing each other on the bed. "Certain things need to be clear before we move forward," I said softly. "Before I decide to be with you again, you will have to get tested and show me the results. You might trust the congressman, but I don't." Tears welled up in her eyes. She seemed about to say something, but then decided not to. Instead, she simply nodded. It revealed to me that she and the congressman weren't using protection. The situation was getting more complicated. Originally, I planned to stay until the kids finished high school, another 14 years until Nate headed to college. My love for them made me willing to endure, but the prospect of long-term distance, especially with an attractive woman under the same roof, seemed untenable. Despite concerns about my reputation, my feelings for her had dwindled over the past 2 weeks. Seeing her leave the bed with sadness no longer stirred me as it once did. My own pain prevented me from offering comfort. Who was she now? Linda's affair was a devastating blow, one that anyone in my position would struggle to comprehend. We had met during our senior year of college, quickly becoming inseparable, and married shortly after graduation. Linda, with her meticulous nature as an actuary, balanced my easygoing, spontaneous personality perfectly. Our future seemed bright and stable, but Congressman Mark Reynolds turned everything upside down. 10 days after Linda and I resumed sharing our bed, she handed me an envelope as I came home from work. Inside was a clean bill of health. "Hope you're happy," she muttered bitterly. "I can't believe I had to go through that. Dr. Wilson will never look at me the same way again." "Not my problem, Linda," I replied coldly. "Stay faithful and you won't have to deal with this humiliation." She shot me a glare but couldn't muster a retort. I pressed on. "How often has Reynolds contacted you?" She started to speak, but I silenced her with a wave of my hand. Reluctantly, she handed over her phone. I found texts and calls from him, but no evidence of further meetings. "Damn it," I muttered. "We're on thin ice." "Agreed," she responded curtly, pocketing her phone and heading to the kitchen. That night, she attempted to rekindle intimacy, but it felt hollow. I went through the motions, devoid of genuine affection. Linda's abrupt return home had already ignited neighborhood gossip, sympathetic glances from men and judgmental sneers from women. One evening, Ellie, our youngest, approached me asking about a women's club she overheard the neighbors talking about. I kept my composure, explaining as gently as possible that Mommy made a mistake. I hugged her tightly, masking my turmoil, knowing this conversation would haunt me. A semblance of normalcy slowly crept back into our lives, though it was a fragile, uneasy peace. Whether Linda admitted it or not, things had irrevocably changed. My trust in her was shattered, and the respect she once commanded was gone. As Tina Turner once sang, "What's love got to do with it?" 6 months later, the tension reached a boiling point. That night, as I turned away from her to sleep, as had become our routine, I heard her crying. "Bill, can we talk?" she asked softly. "Sure," I sighed, not hiding my exhaustion. "Can you please turn around?" Her voice was shaky. I sighed again, then turned to face her. She looked into my eyes, searching for something. "Do you realize how long it's been since we were close?" She began. "Say it," I demanded. "Admit it." "We haven't been close since I went out with Mark," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You satisfy me physically, then you shut down. You ensure I'm happy, but it's all mechanical. You haven't hugged me in months. I miss our closeness." "You can't even say the words," I replied. "Your date. You cheated on me with him. Admit it, I'm not stupid. You go out and don't come back until the next day. You make it sound cheap and tawdry," she protested. "Yes, we had sex on Saturday night and it was great. He was gentle and caring, just like you. Really, it was an unforgettable experience." "That's why we're not making love anymore. You gave him something that was supposed to be mine and you enjoyed it. It was unforgettable, as you said. Come on, Bill, it was one night, 2 days. Statistically, it's nothing compared to the hundreds of days we've spent together. We can move past this if you're willing to try, she pleaded. Thanks for the math lesson, but I've never seen our marriage as a numbers game. Would you feel the same if I did it with Mary Jo Young? Mary Jo Young, a divorced blonde with a good figure, lived down the street. Almost every wife in the neighborhood watched her closely around their husbands. Wait, are you saying you want Mary Jo? No way, she exclaimed. Listen to yourself. I never said I wanted Mary Jo. That was you projecting. I was just wondering how you'd react if I did, I clarified. She looked puzzled until realization dawned, then her expression turned angry. I can read between the lines, no need for words, I replied smugly. She avoided my gaze. Do you realize because of your actions, Ellie is being bullied at school? The other kids heard their moms calling you names. It's been tough for her, I informed her. Her anger turned to shock. Ellie never mentioned it, she murmured, processing the news. I'm truly sorry. Sorry isn't enough. You called the night unforgettable. It was unforgettable for the betrayal, I declared. With that, I turned away and went to sleep, unaware of her next move. To her credit, Linda made significant efforts over the next few months to be a better mother. Traditionally, I had been the primary caregiver. But suddenly Linda was driving the kids to their activities, helping with homework and being present. It made me wonder if she finally understood that our family had to come first. The kids appreciated the extra attention, but Ellie, with her perceptiveness beyond her 8 years, noticed the difference. Mom is really trying, Daddy, she said to me one day, her big eyes full of hope. I hoped Ellie would eventually get the proper apology she deserved. Her innocent question struck a deep chord with me. I tried to smile genuinely, acknowledging her keen awareness. On the surface, everything seemed normal in the Matthews household. I worked diligently to maintain appearances, while Linda appeared desperate to regain my favor. We were two people sharing a roof, going through the motions for our children's sake. Despite her efforts, my affection for her had dwindled, and she complicated things by staying in touch with Congressman Reynolds. I regularly monitored her phone calls and messages. She thought she had covered her tracks, but she didn't realize how easy it was to clone a phone and access all communications. Reynolds kept in touch, and Linda tried to keep him at arm's length, for now. Can we schedule another date soon? I'll be in town, he texted nearly a month ago. My husband is still upset from last time, she replied. I can't risk it. Needless to say, I wasn't impressed. A month later, we marked our 10th anniversary with a family trip to the aquarium. The kids were excited, but Linda seemed out of place. She waited until the kids were engrossed in watching the fish before expressing her disappointment with me. We've always celebrated our anniversaries with a romantic dinner. Now, you're changing tradition because you're holding a grudge. When did you become so petty? She asked. You did this to us, to yourself. I'm just living with the fallout, I replied coldly. Can't you move past this? She pleaded. How often do you two communicate? I asked directly. She dared to smirk before reaching into her bag, retrieving her phone and handing it to me. I tossed it high into the air and caught it easily when it fell. You've been disloyal, and I acknowledge you're smart enough to hide it. There's no evidence of your affair on this phone since I first confiscated it. But the past messages and calls, you never explicitly rejected him. Why? Her cheeks flushed as she looked away. Yes, I knew that was a rhetorical question, I muttered. Amidst this turmoil, my career and my children provided stability. My colleagues often remarked that I looked like I needed a good night's sleep, or 6. I was convinced I was developing an ulcer. My alcohol consumption had increased and sleep was elusive. There were nights when I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering what went wrong. Linda insisted she still loved me, justifying her actions as separate from our relationship. She felt entitled to her night out with Reynolds and showed no guilt for her behavior, only regret for the injury she caused me. I waited for the other shoe to drop. Surprisingly, my mother-in-law became a source of strength during this challenging time. She repeatedly expressed regret for her daughter's actions. We apologize, Bill. We didn't raise her to be this selfish. but I really hope you can find a way to move past this," she said during one of her calls to check on me. "I know what you're doing for the children." As I headed to the kitchen, I grabbed another cooler of beer to take outside. We were having our usual monthly summer block party in the neighborhood. Outside, we had 2 grills going, offering a variety of hot and cold dishes, fruits, desserts, and drinks. The weather was perfect, sunny and 80 degrees Fahrenheit with hardly a breeze. The gathering had started a few hours ago and was expected to continue well into the evening. These events were always enjoyable for both kids and adults. As I moved through the house, I heard female voices from our home office, typically off-limits to non-family. I intended to redirect them to the family room or living area. While most activity happened outside, sometimes someone sought refuge indoors for AC or quiet talks. However, this particular space posed a problem. Yeah, when Bill takes charge, I can't help but think of him. He's assertive, driven, and focused. I can't shake the memory of that night. "It's something I'll cherish forever," Linda declared to her companion. As I approached the room, I halted in my tracks, my legs weakening. I almost stumbled. Damn, how many people know I'm being betrayed? I heard laughter. Apparently, there were 3 of them inside. I missed the rest of the conversation as I fought the urge to vomit. I was relieved to reach the restroom before getting sick, emptying everything from the night before, breakfast and lunch. After tidying up, I brought the cooler of beer outside and handed 2 bottles to the guys manning the grills. "Hey Bill, you all right? You seem a bit off," said John, casually concerned. "John, I'm good," I replied before drifting away. I stayed quiet for the rest of the gathering. When Linda and her friends returned, I felt eyes on me and noticed smirks aimed my way. Maybe I was losing it, but it seemed like almost every woman at the block party was sneering at me. Later that night, after putting the kids to bed and finishing the cleanup, I confronted Linda about my discomfort. She sat on a lounge chair, sipping a wine cooler, looking content. I joined her. "Did anyone show up today who doesn't know about your affair?" I asked sincerely. She looked taken aback. I returned her gaze, pretending innocence. "I might have mentioned it to a couple of girlfriends recently. It was quite the experience," she chuckled. "He's a charming congressman." "I can't believe you did this. First you betray me, then you humiliate me in front of your friends, making every husband aware of your infidelity and branding me as a fool," I accused, my voice trembling with anger. Linda shot back, "I'm not unfaithful, and I won't tolerate being labeled as such. It was just one mistake. I didn't sleep with a stranger in some cheap motel." Her eyes blazed with intensity as she stood up from the garden chair. "I've had enough of this," she shouted. "You've been playing the victim for over a year now. Yes, I had an affair with another man, a handsome and strong man. It's time to move on. I won't be held hostage by your insecurities any longer. Either file for divorce or face reality. I'm done pretending to be the perfect couple. Decide now." Her outburst left me speechless. I sat there stunned as she stormed away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Despite my reserved nature, I seldom panic or act rashly. However, this situation had pushed me to my breaking point. The thought of not seeing my children every day was unbearable, but I had to think about our future. I had a lawyer ready to fight for me, so I decided to take action. First thing Monday morning, I had Linda served with divorce papers at her workplace. As expected, she was furious. My phone buzzed incessantly with her calls, but I ignored them all, bracing for the confrontation at home. As I walked into the house from the garage, Linda exploded in anger. "You fool!" she screamed. "Your fragile male ego is bruised, and you humiliate me in front of my colleagues just like you did in front of our friends and neighbors." "You practically begged me to file, so I did," I retorted calmly. She glared at me but said nothing. I put down my belongings and went to talk to my children, reassuring them of my love despite the changes ahead. Ellie, our older daughter, understood the situation better than Nate, who seemed confused and scared. I knew this would be hard on him, but I trusted Ellie to help him through it. Living in a no-fault state meant the divorce should have been straightforward. Linda was expected to get primary custody, the house, child support, and alimony, but she fought back, contesting every point. Her lawyer used every trick to delay the process, even suggesting we go through marital counseling. What's your game? You say you love me, yet you've caused so much pain. You told your friends he was the best you've ever had. Why should I stay in this marriage if all I get is misery? I love my kids, but if I stay with you, they'll only remember an angry, bitter man, I said during one session. But I love you, Bill. Are you going to let one mistake ruin everything? Yes, he was incredible, but it was a one-time thing. Please forgive me, she pleaded. I can't, Linda. You broke our vows and made a mockery of them. I can't just forget that. You promised me loyalty, I replied, shaking my head. I hadn't planned for this, but desperation drove me to a drastic measure. I sought the help of a well-connected lawyer to approach the chairman of the opposing political party. Congressman Reynolds had ruined my marriage, and now I had the means to ruin his career. The opposing party eagerly awaited any scandal that could damage Reynolds' reputation and White House aspirations. My lawyer had kept them informed, and now we were ready. The meeting was set in my lawyer's office. After introductions, I placed a sealed plastic bag on the table. The chairman's eyes widened as he saw the contents. "Dear God," he muttered, "is this what I think it is?" "If you think it's evidence that could end Congressman Reynolds' career, then yes," I replied. He looked at the bag like it was a treasure chest. He didn't touch it, just stared in awe. That night she came home and went straight to the shower. She handles the laundry, so she thought I wouldn't look, but I did. I found her underwear at the bottom of the hamper. Everyone knows about DNA now. Test these and you'll find two distinct sets. Here's her toothbrush for comparison. You can get Reynolds' DNA however you see fit, I explained. He nodded, understanding the implications. Why are you doing this? His eyes seemed to ask. Because she thought she could betray me and get away with it. She flaunted her affair, assuming I would forgive her eventually. She underestimated me. To hell with her and Reynolds, I declared. Your career is over, Mark Reynolds. And Linda, you foolish woman, how could you not see this coming? I had a feeling Congressman Reynolds knew about the scheme against him, but it became undeniable when he yelled at Linda on the phone a week after my meeting with the private investigator. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered, blindsided by his fury. I had cloned her phone months ago, essentially admitting I was monitoring her calls. If they had been communicating through other means, I didn't know. What did you do? She demanded when I called her back an hour later. I understood her question but felt vindictive. I just ordered a pepperoni pizza with garlic bread. Why do you care what I eat? Wait, how do you know what I eat? She snapped. From past encounters, I knew she despised my intrusive actions, yet she also knew better than to underestimate me. Guess being right about one thing out of two isn't too bad, I replied smugly. I'm not sure how you managed it, but it seems you got back at Reynolds somehow. He threatened to rough me up for something you did, though he wouldn't say what. Thanks, by the way. My parents are furious, yours too. Emily has been avoiding me, and you can't seem to grasp that what Reynolds and I did was unrelated to our relationship. Yes, about that, I started. Congressman Reynolds, who had been assured of retaining his seat, suddenly dropped out of the race 8 months before the election, citing significant mental fatigue. With everything else going on in my life, seeking female companionship was the least of my concerns. I hadn't looked at a woman in an appealing way for months until my daughter brought it up. Dad, when do you plan to start seeing other women? Emily asked casually as my children joined me for the second weekend. Mom's friend Jessica really wants to go out with you, she said. I was stunned. My jaw must have dropped. Lost in the chaos of divorce, I hadn't thought much about my future beyond taking care of my kids every other weekend and a few weeks during the summer. Jessica brought it up. And you're okay with that? I asked, surprised. Well, she didn't directly tell me, Dad, Emily revealed. She overheard her talking with Annie's mom. But yeah, I'd be fine with it, Dad. I don't want you to be alone, but please not Marcy's mom. None of us kids like her. Kids pick up on things, Dad. Jessica had been divorced for about 5 years. She had a terrible husband, and she was a charming, lively brunette with a bubbly personality. I had never considered she might be interested in me. When you're married, you don't think about other women's possibilities. At least I didn't. Was I naive? Emily was quietly keeping an eye on me. It's okay, Dad. I'm almost 9. I understand about divorce and all. Nate and I will be fine. Just take care of yourself. It seemed like I was back in the dating scene. Jessica became my first date after re-entering the dating pool, and it felt nice, though somewhat obligatory. I explained to her that emotionally I wasn't ready for anything serious yet, considering my recent return to dating. She responded with a comforting smile, telling me I didn't owe an explanation to every person I dated. Jessica offered valuable advice, almost like a crash course on navigating life with divorced parents. She also mentioned that I would catch the eye of other divorced moms among my children's friends, given my reputation as a good father with a successful career and, well, not unattractive. She blushed a bit when she mentioned the last part. I went on to date Jessica and a few other divorced mothers. Sometimes I hardly thought about my ex-wife Linda or our past marriage. While I admitted to feeling lonely at times, it wasn't enough to consider reconciling with her. I refused to entertain the idea of her betraying me again. Linda, however, quickly dismissed her affair as a foolish mistake, promising never to repeat it. A foolish mistake? I scoffed. It was poor judgment, a lack of respect, and ultimately selfishness. You prioritized an affair with the congressman over your family's well-being. Her mouth opened and closed twice. I sensed her desire to respond, but she remained speechless. I half expected her to persist, despite the fact that she couldn't justify her actions, especially now that contacting Reynolds seemed pointless. One Saturday during dinner, while the kids and I were visiting my ex-mother-in-law, she informed me that Reynolds had asked her never to contact him again. He seemed to think you played a role in his decision to withdraw from the election and that I didn't intervene enough, she recounted. I raised an eyebrow and continued eating quietly, opting not to comment. A few months later, some friends from work suggested going to a new upscale lounge with a rooftop bar. When I was married, I avoided Thursday evening outings like the plague, but now that I'm single, I found myself going out regularly. 4 of us found a table, ordered drinks, and soaked in the ambiance of the place. I noticed the 2 women as soon as they walked in. The first woman looked to be in her mid-30s, but dressed more in line with someone in their 20s, aiming to evoke a youthful vibe. She wore a silk red blouse, slightly unbuttoned, and a short skirt accentuating her long, toned legs. With wavy blonde hair and hazel eyes, she seemed brimming with confidence. On the other hand, her friend seemed out of place in the lounge setting. Slightly older than her companion, possibly in her early 40s, she exuded sophistication and charm. Clad in a fitted black dress and elegant heels, she radiated grace with her shoulder-length auburn hair and blue eyes. Seating themselves at a nearby table, the women quickly caught the attention of several men eager to engage or dance with them. One of my friends nudged me. "Bill, go talk to them." "Maybe later," I replied, still feeling the weight of my recent past. "Come on, you need this," another friend urged. I took a deep breath and walked over to their table. "Hi, Bill, mind if I join you?" I asked, trying to sound confident. The women exchanged glances before the confident one spoke up. "Sure, Lisa, and this is Sarah." As we chatted, I found myself relaxing. Lisa's boldness was balanced by Sarah's quiet elegance. They both had stories of their own, stories of divorce, starting over, and raising kids alone. It was refreshing to talk to someone who understood. Later that night, as I drove home, I realized something. I was ready to move forward, to leave the past behind. Linda's betrayal had hurt deeply, but it had also taught me resilience. I would rebuild my life, not just for me, but for my children. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity. It was time to live for myself again, to find happiness on my terms. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. I couldn't resist the allure of the dance floor, especially with a woman who had striking jet-black hair and exuded a magnetic energy. She danced with enthusiasm, accepting partners left and right, while the woman with platinum blonde hair moved sparingly and seemed more reserved. An hour later, determined to invite the blonde woman to dance, I approached her table. However, the black-haired woman intercepted me, pulling me onto the dance floor. Instantly captivated, I forgot about her companion. We danced to a mix of energetic pop and Latin beats until the music slowed. When she kissed me with fiery passion, I was hooked. We left the club together and headed to a cozy, hidden rooftop bar. Our chemistry carried into the night, and she revealed details about her life. She and her friend were celebrating her recent divorce. Grace proved to be an incredible lover, and we dated for about a month before she expressed a need for space to heal. I respected her decision, and we parted amicably. Since our initial encounter, I hadn't had the chance to ask about her friend, which piqued my curiosity. A few weeks later, I found myself alone in a sophisticated whiskey bar, seeking solace with a drink. It wasn't my turn to care for the children after a grueling week, so I had the weekend to myself. She walked in solo, commanding the room's attention. Her figure was athletic, with cascading auburn curls framing her face and tumbling over her shoulders. Striding confidently in stylish heels, she sat next to me. I felt like I was in a dream. I fumbled for a clever opening line, but before I could speak, she locked eyes with me and asked for my drink order. I replied with a sly grin, my thoughts racing. "Excellent choice," she purred. A woman with refined taste ordering the same single malt scotch as mine. She spent the evening discussing the thriving marketing firm she had founded years ago. Not only was she captivating and intelligent, but she also ran a successful business. Later, we went to her modern loft. She preferred intimacy in her own space, a sentiment she explained in detail. With her flawlessly toned physique, I couldn't believe she was 45. Our first night together was unforgettable. She was an exceptional kisser, and I felt a connection with her unlike any since my time with Linda. In just one night, Maria Washington opened up to me more than Linda ever had during our 9-year marriage. Maria confessed her dedication to her career and her preference for casual relationships. Despite developing genuine feelings for her, knowing a traditional relationship wasn't on the table, I agreed to be friends with benefits. For the next year, we met monthly until Maria unexpectedly fell in love with a much younger artist. "You're one lucky guy," my ex-mother-in-law would occasionally call me. Despite the divorce, we remained close, bound by mutual understanding and our grandchildren. I still called them Mom and Dad. "Could I ask you a favor, Bill?" she inquired cautiously. "Of course, as long as it doesn't involve your daughter," I replied. It was a matter of courtesy to take my mother-in-law's request to bring her personal assistant to their upcoming charity gala seriously. "She's a good-hearted person, Bill. She went through a tough divorce a few years ago and hasn't dated since. She needs a decent guy to show her that not all men are scoundrels. And I think you're a decent guy," my ex-mother-in-law explained. "Isn't it odd when your former mother-in-law tries to set you up on a date?" "Just one thing, Mom," I interjected. "Please tell me she's not boring." Mom caught on to the humor and chuckled. "I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, Bill. You might even let us keep the kids for a night or two," she teased. Mom was spot on. I was pleasantly surprised. Sherilyn was a delightful bundle of charm with a well-proportioned figure. She was warm without being overly effusive, and she had a charming habit of wrinkling her nose and squinting her green eyes when amused. Equally important, she had a genuinely great personality. I made a point of sticking close to Sherilyn throughout the evening, giving her my full attention, much like I would have with Linda. Sherilyn seemed appreciative of the gesture. While she engaged in conversation, she tended to listen more than talk, which I understood given her background. We sat with my in-laws at a table. Mom was as graceful as ever, while Dad was initially reserved. I understood his demeanor, but he grew more animated as the evening progressed. I surprised Sherilyn with my dancing skills, which I had honed to please Linda, who loved to dance. Sherilyn also demonstrated proficiency, especially in faster dances, and she complimented me perfectly in slow dances, as if we had been dancing together for years. I savored the feeling of her body against mine. As I escorted Sherilyn to the door, she gave me a gentle kiss on the lips and handed me her phone number. After realizing my in-laws needed more time with their grandchildren, I made it a priority to arrange something. A few days later, I called Sherilyn and asked her out. She eagerly agreed, and we planned a date for the following Friday at one of the city's most prestigious Italian restaurants, followed by a visit to a local art exhibit. Sherilyn's attire for our date was bold and stylish, leaving a lasting impression on me. We had a fantastic evening, and after several more dates, I felt it was time for her to meet my 8-year-old daughter, Elise, and for me to meet her daughter. We planned a fun-filled day playing mini-golf and enjoying a picnic in a picturesque park. The day went well, especially since the two girls quickly formed a close bond. However, my son Nate wasn't thrilled, as he believed all girls had cooties. Sherilyn and I met several times a week, and when I had my children, we planned family activities together. Everything was going smoothly until a few weeks into the new school year when I received an unexpected phone call from Linda. "I'm not sure what your girlfriend has been teaching our kids, but Nate was in the principal's office today for fighting. His face is all bruised up, and he's been suspended for 3 days. He says it all started with this Monique girl he keeps calling his sister," she fumed over the phone. "First of all, you have no right to speak ill of my girlfriend. I'll come over after dinner and take Nate out for ice cream. Let's not jump to conclusions until we know the full story," I responded calmly. I heard her sigh before she hung up. After dinner, I picked up Nate and took him to a cozy family-owned ice cream shop. As soon as he got into my car, I examined his injuries. He had a cut on his lip and a scratch on his left cheek. "You should see the other guy, Dad," he joked. "What's the real story, Nathan Abraham?" I asked, using his full name to emphasize the seriousness. He winced at the formal tone. "A kid was picking on Mo. I told him to leave her alone. He threw the first punch, so I punched him back. They say I broke his nose. It made a loud crack, and there was blood everywhere," he explained, trying to hide a grin. The boy who harassed Mo was 2 years older than Nate. "Will Mo tell me the same story?" I asked. "Absolutely, Dad. I wouldn't have hit him if he hadn't started it. I was just defending Mo. You always tell me to look out for Elise, so I figured it applied to Mo too." "She's really small, Dad," Nate said. Nate had a valid point. Monique inherited her mother's petite stature, making her at least half a head shorter than most of her peers. I had always emphasized to Nate the importance of protecting his sister, and it seemed he now saw Monique as part of the family. It was heartwarming to see how the innocence of childhood often surpassed the wisdom of experience. "I commend you for standing up for Mo, but let's keep this between us," I told him. "I'll speak with the principal and see what can be done. You might want to update your mother on Mo's status. It seems you and Elise haven't been keeping her fully informed about my life, which I appreciate. However, it might be better coming from you this time," I said. My 7-year-old understood completely. Children mature quickly these days. "And Dad, when are you and Sherilyn getting married? She's awesome, you know," he added. Kids grow up fast, and he was right. It was time to make a commitment to Sherilyn. The next day, I contacted the principal. The school had a strict zero-tolerance policy for fighting, regardless of whether it was in self-defense. However, they also had a zero-tolerance policy for bullying. As a result, the aggressor received a 6-day suspension following interviews with witnesses. Although I disagreed with the policy, I advised Nate not to contest his punishment. I assured him of my support and promised to propose to Sherilyn as soon as I could afford the ring. Things got complicated when Linda discovered Sherilyn was my ex-mother-in-law's personal assistant and that Mom had arranged our first meeting. "What on earth, Mom? Aren't you supposed to be on my side?" Linda yelled later, according to Mom. "There's no your side," Mom replied. "Bill's not coming back to you. You completely messed that up, so why let a good man go to waste? Sherilyn is a wonderful woman and a great friend. She deserves someone like Bill." Mom described Linda's reaction as explosive as she recounted the incident. While both my children enjoyed Sherilyn's company, Elise, in particular, admired her nurturing demeanor toward me. Sherilyn had a natural inclination to make me feel valued and respected, which encouraged me to treat her like my queen. Elise seemed to enjoy witnessing the affectionate banter between Sherilyn and me. "I'm not sure if you two are adorable or annoying," Elise remarked one day, "but I like being around to see it." A couple of months later, our intimate wedding included only our 3 children, my parents, and my ex-in-laws as guests. The court clerk who officiated the ceremony was surprised when my ex-mother-in-law stood as Sherilyn's maid of honor. "It's quite a story," I chuckled when she inquired. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition to come from the classic British comedy ensemble Monty Python's Flying Circus. But truth be told, nobody expects an inquiry from a federal marshal either. I was completely caught off guard when 2 federal agents barged into my office one Monday morning. They were investigating a certain former congressman's assault and subsequent injury in the restroom of a high-end restaurant in Houston, Texas. My name, along with those of several other aggrieved husbands, had come up as potential suspects. "I can't say I'm sorry to hear about the congressman's troubles. Nobody deserves it more," I told the irritated marshals. "You do realize this man had an affair with my then-wife almost 4 years ago? If I had any intention of acting on it, wouldn't I have done so long before now?" I responded with heavy sarcasm. However, the questioning from the federal agents was only the beginning. A week later, a reporter from the Associated Press appeared at my office seeking details about the incident. He had somehow obtained a confidential list of 26 women the congressman allegedly had affairs with during his time in office. By this point, several people were aware of Linda's fling with the congressman, though I hadn't publicized it. Over the years, Linda likely told more people than I did, as she took pride in her achievement. However, I couldn't help but wonder about her level of pride now that news of the congressman's misconduct had emerged, implicating her as one of his lovers. "Why did you disclose that to him?" She practically screamed at me over the phone. "I didn't. He informed me that your name was on the congressman's roster. All I did was confirm the accuracy of your inclusion on the list. I wasn't going to lie to spare you from embarrassment." "I am not promiscuous," she yelled before I ended the call. I couldn't help but chuckle. I even thought about taking an extended vacation out of town when the news article broke. Linda had caused the mess, but I was going to suffer the embarrassing fallout as well. Sherilyn advised me against that. "Don't engage in any confrontation. Stick to the truth. She cheated on you, you divorced her, and you moved on," she said. Unfortunately, my children were going to face verbal bullying for the rest of their school years. We would be addressing the fact that their mother was a self-centered cheater for a long time. I also felt for my ex-in-laws, who had become close friends. After the article came out, we invited them to stay with us in the house we had bought for a couple of weeks. During that time, they mostly stayed indoors and avoided answering their phones. I adore my daughter. You understand parental emotions, but I'm deeply ashamed that she thought it acceptable to engage in such behavior, Dad confessed. No father wants his daughter to be perceived in that manner. As time passed, the scandal faded and life resumed its usual course. My children started spending more time with Sherilyn, Mo, and me at our house. It wasn't official, but our home naturally became the neighborhood kids' hangout spot. Initially, Linda objected, but I believe things smoothed over. I also ensured Elise and Nate kept open communication with Linda to prevent her from accusing me of alienating her children. Mom and Dad's frequent visits helped ease tensions when the kids were with me. We rarely discussed Linda, although she remained their mother. She was an ex in my life. The kids also refrained from mentioning her out of respect for Sherilyn, whom they now called Mom. At first, I sensed discomfort from Linda's parents when the kids started calling Sherilyn Mom, but that soon faded as they had been close to Sherilyn even before our marriage. Amidst all the upheaval in my life and my family's, I paid little attention to Linda's affairs. I knew she occasionally dated based on the kids' comments, but I was surprised when Elise announced one afternoon that her mother was engaged. A wave of sadness washed over me for what might have been. Then I felt Sherilyn's comforting embrace, and my sorrow quickly transformed into gratitude for what I now had.